Grandmama used to pray, oh Lord, please save them from the evil snares and all the dangers that entangle. Yea, though they walking through the valley of the shadows, just prepare and make them fit for every battle, because I know they bound to come, and I know they bound to fall, but in your bounty, Lord, preserve their beautiful. Right, we still surviving off of grandma's prayers, surrounded by the jungle and the lion's den. Tread light, cause these traps is inconspicuous. They hide right in plain sight, thinking we don't see them when they linger. Look right beneath the surface, then leave a trail of corpses. Crisis, prices, your life a disposable commodity, like living in a fantasy, conditioned to believe that the system even cares whether selling CDs or walking or driving or reading. Look, they don't even need a reason, it's just you breathing and being black. When it's such a pretty fall, it don't seem like we falling at all, at all. It's just a GMO dream, where things are never really what they seem. Please cue the violins, tell them just to play me something pretty, cause this gritty city got me screaming bloody murder. City got me screaming. This gritty city got me on some. Look, get your hand up on my pocket. Distraction, so lazy they use the same tactics, like condom with some trinkets. Just don't let them get to thinking. That light bulb gets a blinking. You know niggas and ideas. Oh dear, my dear, you may not know me, but I know you very well. Foresight, they say hindsight is 20/20. Well, tell me something, we gotta see that history is on repeat, and maybe it takes a beat and a melody to speak a little louder than the message in the clouds or the essence in the air. I swear, my God is just so clear that a system driven by fear can never give us nothing but more of the same things. Oh, when it's such a pretty fall, it don't seem like we falling at all. It's just a GMO dream, where things are never really what they seem. Please cue the violins, tell them just to play me something pretty, cause this gritty city got me screaming. It's murder. Got me screaming, got me. This gritty city got me on some.
What's happening? South Bronx, South Bronx, the South Bronx. Y'all know about that right there. Shout out to KRS-One, even though he nuttier than squirrel shit. He's one of the cats that put it down when it comes to this hip hop thing. And it is Hip Hop History Month, but we're not here for that today. But we will have a whole lot of hip hop and a whole lot of hip hop history as we go along. As you may notice, we have I'm here on a new day and time. Today is Friday, November 3rd. I want to start off by shouting out my brother Jinx, R.I.P. to Jinx. Jinx, my younger brother who made his transition. It would have been his 50th born date today. So, you know what I'm saying? So I want to shout out my little brother, and get it started like that. November 3rd is actually a real memorable day. I mean, 4 years ago, I was actually in an accident where I was drugged by a tractor trailer, my car, on a highway here in Georgia. And car ended up spinning around. I was pinned up under a car, but I made it, and I'm here today with you. You know, some of y'all, probably not too happy I'm here, but I'm here anyway. Anyway, today, as you know, our show rocks RSTV 8 a.m. Monday mornings, but I'm going to have a new time slot as well. So we'll keep that 8 a.m. slot, but also on noon, Fridays at noon. You can catch us right here, RSTV. And what I want to do with these Fridays is want to get back into political education, because I think that oftentimes, we laugh, we have a ball, and we get down and all of that type stuff. But we forget about, the meat of it all. You know what I mean? We forget about, why it is we're here, what's the purpose, so on and so forth. And selfishly, for me, it's about movement. It's about organizing. You know what I mean? Everything else is cool, but I want to know, how we looking, when we gonna get free in a real way, real practical way. My first guest that I'm gonna have on, I was doing the South Bronx theme song because she hails from the South Bronx. Shout out to the South Bronx. And she's been putting in a lot of work, organizing on different levels. she's no stranger to the platform. You've probably seen her recently with the homie Dr. Jared Ball and crew. So shout out to them for what they've been doing. But I wanted to kind of take it to a different space. And since you're already familiar with it, and if you're not familiar with it, when I finish, you'll be familiar with it. So get familiar. Anyway, we got my sister from South Bronx, Claudia De la Cruz. What up, Claudia? How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for inviting me, Kalonji. I'm excited to be with you.
Hey man, listen, man, I'm happy you could make it. I've been inviting you like 18 years, and you just finally coming through. Claudia's fronting, I'm straight fronting.
You said 18 years, so way before the Right Starter TV, way before Black Power Media, way before all of that.
Okay. Check out Tribe like she was watching Riot Starter. Anyway, no doubt, no doubt. Yeah, I mean, I was like, yo, Claudia, can you come on? She's like, yo, speak to my people.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Put the peoples on me. You know what I mean? I don't know
Listen,
what's up with people like that, But I'm not mad at you. Chuck D did the same thing the other day, and then he hit me back like, "Yo, can we do it now?" I'm like, "All right, that's a little more like it." I'm like,
I'm
"Man, I
not
thought that was you."
I'm no Chuck D, but I definitely get the reins pulled by people already in
Okay,
terms of me doing stuff outside of the agenda.
no
So
doubt. Nah. I'm just messing with you. We need structure. Structure's important. What I mean, I'm not offended. I'm gonna definitely talk shit, but I ain't offended. So yeah, real happy to have you on. We're going to talk about the obvious a little bit later on because I think that you've been making your rounds on your Cornell West. You know what I'm saying? Just touring around, handshaking, kissing babies. And doing the speech. But we're gonna and we will get to that because that's important. But what I would like to do, one of the things, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, is we want to take it back to political education. So we will start off with some terms and whatnot. But before we go there, for folks who are unfamiliar with you as a person, as an individual, before you became a socialist and you was just a young youngster in the South Bronx, what led you to our liberation movement and and to where you are right now for folks who are unfamiliar?
well, I appreciate the question. I think um my parents are working class folks. My dad was a construction worker for a long time. And the first time that I heard the word laborer came from my dad. Construction workers usually get their hands all torn up, their knees all torn up. Um, and there's a moment where kids just become really rebellious and don't want to go to school and don't want to do certain things that their parents tell them they're supposed to do. And I remember my dad basically showing us his hands and saying, I'm a laborer, I'm a worker. And if you're going to work, you have to make sure that you work it easier than what I've had it.
Hmm.
Um, my mom was an educator. She worked in the New York education system for over 35 years with children with disabilities. Um, and so I come from a working class background. My grandmother, who had a huge part in raising me, worked the rice fields in the Dominican Republic. She also worked the sugar cane fields in the Dominican Republic very closely with Haitian migrants. And so all of that in some way or another shaped my understanding of myself as a Black Caribbean second generation immigrant working class person. So I understood from a very young age where my alliances lied. But I became more politicized at the age of 13 when I entered a church that was grounded on liberation theology coming from the Latin American community around the moments of the fights against dictators and the desire to build revolution in Latin America. Liberation theology was a branch of faith traditions that aligned itself with revolutionary processes. And so I came into that church at 13. A lot of the folks were atheists. A lot of the folks came from resistance movements in the Caribbean and Latin America. There were a lot of folks from El Salvador who got here, um, running away from a 10-year war that was backed by the United States. A lot of folks that were here also creating circles of support for the Bolivarian Revolution of Venezuela. A lot of folks who had a long-standing relationship with the Black liberation struggle, so the Move family and other folks connected to the Jericho movement and the political prisoners movement in the U.S. And so I was nurtured by a church that was not only essential to me spiritually, but also politically, that shaped my politics as I engaged more and more in it. And I actually was moved into theology because of that type of revolutionary understanding of faith. And so yeah, it was very hard, I think, and it becomes really hard when you are given a pair of glasses to see the world and understand the world and engage with the world, to then go back to just like ordinary life without any type of a critical sense of how things work and why they work the way they work. It was unacceptable for me after coming into contact with a lot of these groups. Some of these folks had been in armed struggles outside of the United States and some inside of the US. And so understanding the need for self-determination, the need for resistance in a moment of oppression, the need for revolution was kind of very, very close to the way that I was shaped as an individual. And so listening to in school and in other places that are there to misinform us, a narrative that went against that, it was hard for me to reconcile the lies. It was hard for me to adopt the narrative that the United States capitalist imperialist system wants to impose on us. And so for me, it became kind of my nature to just be a political agent in the spaces that I was. And so that aspect of my life was foundational, was a grounding experience to then take on organizing work with the other young people. Somebody asked me something similar like 2 days ago. Basically, how did you become a Marxist? And I became a Marxist teaching young people about Marxism. I kind of got it based on, again, the conversations with some of my elders. I read Capital. I understood surplus value and just like rationally. But when it came time for me to be able to explain that to folks younger than me at 20 somewhat years old and engage in reading the Communist Manifesto and breaking down the means of production, that's when it actually made sense. When I was forced to teach, then I became more affirmed in that tradition. And so I'm very grateful for the moments that I've been a student and that I've also been a teacher in the process. I can't hear you.
I'm always talking about who got their mic muted, and here I am. It's very important. What you said, you hit it right on, hit it on the nail, hit it on the head. The best teachers are better students. So for us, it's always about, I don't, I hear people, I see people that teach political education classes. Sometimes they're so arrogant, they don't brush up on it. They don't, their understanding gets stuck in certain, zones, and stuck in the 60s, stuck in the 70s, so on and so forth. And the world changes. And with capitalism morphs and recreates itself into whatever the flavor of the month is, right?
Yeah.
Marxism. You mentioned you was a Marxist. Marxism for dummies. You know what I'm saying? What does that mean? You are a Marxist. You're a Dominican from
From
the
the South
South
Bronx.
Bronx. You out your mind. They like, she tripping, talking about I'm a Marxist. Explain that, and why did you become a Marxist? Why did you grasp onto that training?
Well, it's not that unfathomable. Like it's something like Amilcar Cabral, in many ways, understood, scientific socialism, and many other Thomas Sankara and many others understood Marxism as a science, which is exactly what it is. Marxism is a science, is a way of understanding and analyzing the world. You mentioned it. Capitalism morphs itself. Capitalism changes. Every moment of crisis, 1973 gave birth to neoliberalism, and there was an oil crisis worldwide, and there was a reorganization of global powers at that time. So neoliberalism was the safe boat, the safe boat for a capitalist society that was in crisis. And what we're seeing now is very similar. We have, wars that are breaking out that the United States is basically financing in Ukraine, financing Israel to murder Palestinians. They are trying to get the Kenyans to be the head of delegations against Haiti. Everywhere you can think of, the United States is placing its hands to be able to promote war. And what that tells us is that there's a decline in imperialism. There's a decline of the global capitalist system. That there are the paths, new paths that are being created, and new geopolitical powers that are emerging. And so when we're talking about Marxism, is the ability to be able to scientifically understand the patterns in history, the shifts in history, the economic base for those changes that happen in institutions, in states, that happen in the cultural realm as well. And so, if we are unable to understand Marxism as a science, and we see it as something that, it's way too academic or something that is too far away from us, then we are definitely shooting ourselves in the foot, because other liberation movements all across the world have utilized Marxist analysis to be able to transform society. Ultimately, that's what we want. We don't only want to understand and analyze society. Ultimately, we want to transform it. And so Marxism allows for us to do that. For me, at least, the way that I came to it, like I was sharing earlier, it was through church, but it was also through the study of revolutions. Specifically the Cuban Revolution, and trying to understand also the process of the USSR in Russia, and the expansion of Marxism into what we understand to be Marxist-Leninist politics. Because Lenin actually expanded Marxism, as did Gramsci and other theoreticians. So I think for me, the value of Marxism is precisely the fact that we're not only seeking to understand the world, we're seeking to transform it. And Marxism allows us to have tools and gain experience from a linkage that happens in history that we understand to be the class struggle, which is ultimately the biggest force in moving society, class struggle. And so a girl from the Bronx, with like Black Caribbean, ancestry. Why would I want to learn about Marxism? The same reason why Ho Chi Minh wanted to learn about Marxism, same reasons why Mao wanted to learn about Marxism, the same reason Fidel Castro wanted to learn about Marxism, and the same reasons Claudia Jones utilized Marxism to come to understand and theorize and write the things she did. And so I always want to learn about the political environments that allowed for some of the biggest political figures in history to emerge. Like, I want to learn what Fidel Castro was studying and what was the Cuban revolutionary processes kind of waging war against in a particular moment. I want to know, the history, or some of the history of China that had led Mao to lead the revolution he led. So in that history is where we learn how to make revolution, not because we're going to copy and paste it, but because we're going to learn from the lessons, and we're going to learn from the failures, because there's a lot of failures as well. And then we're going to study our own process as well, our own context, and be able to create what we need to create to be able to move forward. And so Marxism for me has been that too.
Well, Claudia, I mean, I appreciate the answer, and I must say that you are absolutely. I've interviewed hundreds of people, right? And you are the first person in the history of of me being in this planet, on this planet, that has stated that I became a Marxist from going to church. Now, I don't know that. That's a hell of a church you was going to.
It
You know what I
was. It
mean?
was
Yeah.
definitely a special project, and it was a safe haven for a lot of organizers and a lot of socialists who were not outwardly socialist. I mean, you have to think about the 90s. Like, people weren't going outside and being like, I'm a socialist, or I'm a Marxist, or I belong to the Socialist Party. Like, that wasn't a thing. And it wasn't a thing because after the fall of the Soviet Union, after the defeat of the Soviet Union, it was understood by many, and the rhetoric in the United States was that socialism had failed. And obviously, the special period in Cuba, all these different things were happening, and the balance of forces, the what was happening in that particular moment was kind of concretizing this idea that socialism was a failed project. And so a lot of people were not necessarily claiming socialism, they were, even though they had been engaged in the 60s and 70s, even though they came from those experiences. People continue to do a certain amount of work, but we're not necessarily claiming to be socialist. And this church was kind of the safe haven where people felt comfortable enough to talk about socialist politics. I mean, everybody in that space, for the most part, were people who were coming from communist parties outside of the US, folks who had participated in socialist parties inside of the US. And again, they didn't necessarily come to church because of the Bible. They came to church because of the community that was brought into the space, and because it was a space for organizing. So it sounds crazy, but that's what it was. That's what it was.
No, it don't sound crazy. Shout out to Reverend Nat Turner. You know what I'm saying?
There you go.
You know, so but nah, and it's important because I think that we have folks who are so narrow
Hmm.
that as soon as you say church, everything turns off. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just, oh, I'm an atheist, I'm a this, I'm a that. All of that's fine. We have to you utilize the tool, and that's what's important when you talk about Marxism, right? You're
That's right.
not you're not trying to be a European. You know what I'm saying? You're like, look, this is a tool for liberation. This is scientific. So how do we take
Yeah,
this and make it work in the best interest of the people, right?
that's
Um,
right.
so with that, um, you are I forget your title with the People's Forum.
Well, I was a founder of the People's Forum, the
Okay,
co-founder and co-executive director, but I
you
took
to
a leave
blame
of
for that. No, I'm joking. Good.
kind kinda proudly to blame for that. I took a leave of absence, so I won't be in the direction of the space for as long as the presidential campaign work is still there. But yeah, that was what I birthed or co-birthed with some other conspirator comrades um, over 5 years ago at this point. So
No doubt. So if you don't mind, tell us about the People's Forum for folks who are unaware, just to kind of. And I was just joking, man. When I go to New York, we try to run up on me, to the yo, what's up, man? We cool, just
no, it's good. Just to share a little bit about the People's Forum came about from many conversations that happened both nationally and internationally with comrades around what was necessary. Um, 2015, 2016 to be able to intervene and strengthen political movements. And we came to the realization that political education needed to be reclaimed. Um, reclaimed meaning that there's a lot of spaces that will say that they're doing political education, but they're doing it from another framework that is not a Marxist Leninist, that is not a socialist, and it's not an intervention necessarily to move people to become political agents. By political agents, I mean people who are intervening politically to transform the conditions, the material conditions of our people. But more so, the way that it has been adopted is through a nonprofit, like understanding of what political education is. So people come in, they get the history, they accumulate that information, and then they don't necessarily impact through political organizing the work with that information. And so we thought it was necessary to create a space where people were able to get the tools, the necessary tools, from a Marxist Leninist, socialist perspective, revolutionary perspective, get gain confidence to a certain extent that has been taken away from the people by acquiring knowledge that we've been told that we don't necessarily have the capacity to process, which are political economy, which is history, like world history, the history of struggles. And so we created the People's Forum to be sort of that incubator, that space where people could come and gain the strength and get the understanding to be able to impact political work. and doing it from a space of uplifting socialist history, socialist values, and the Marxist method of understanding society. And so we have a space that is on 37th Street in New York City, which is like the midpoint. So everyone from the different boroughs could come. And it's also a space that has some sort of like international sense to it, not only because of our internationalist politics, but because we are in a city that is also an internationalist city. There are people from all over the world. And so there was a particular intention in making the People's Forum New York City based in the place that it is. We also have the cultural component of it because we understand that culture is at the heart of being able to move people in emotions, in thought, in action. And so culture is also a huge part of the work that the People's Forum does. We have a cafe area because we understand that breaking bread is important. And that is where conspiring happens, where people get together, breathe together, eat together, and strategize together. And so we wanted to create that space where people were speaking to each other, learning, struggling for conceptual unity in one space. And the People's Forum has been there for a little bit over 5 years. And I'm proud to say that, you know, a lot of organizations and a lot of movements have been part of building the space.
No doubt. I like how Claudia came in with that commercial real quick. She's like, "Look, People's Forum, everybody be a part of it. We got it all." Nah, and I like how you was politically correct instead of saying that a lot of these organizations, these nonprofits are faking the funk. They're co-opting, you know, they're co-opting shit, and y'all just came in and said we gonna, put it in its proper context. That was nice how you did that. I wanna, I wanna, I wanna, because you touched on something that's very, very vital, the culture component, right? And that's one of the things that I'm struggling, I'm fighting for, because to me, without culture, you have nothing. You know what I'm saying? I mean, political education is job one. But if you're not clear about who you are and what your mission is and who and what you're fighting for, to me that's all a part of the cultural aspect. So I want you, if you don't mind, to speak a little bit on that and on the importance of culture, particularly for you, again, coming up out of your background, so on and so forth, and as a tool for organizing, because I think
Mhm.
that oftentimes the mark is missed. You know what I mean? We get with, we want a some type of revolutionary rainbow coalition, and that's fine. But if you have no identity, if you're not clear about who you are, then you'll be totally confused. If you don't mind, touching on that, that would be great.
No, I don't mind at all. I mean, one of the things that we often talk about in our conception of culture is very much like Amilcar Cabral spoke about it. Amilcar Cabral spoke about culture as everything we do. You know, the way we speak, the language we eat, what we read, the writings that we produce, everything that the working class produces is part of creating culture. And art is an aspect of it. And so in our social movements, we cannot think about culture, the culture that we're creating in our spaces, the culture that we are adopting in our spaces or promoting in our spaces. Again, be it the way we speak, be it the way that we relate, what we produce, what we don't produce. We cannot continue to think that is some sort of an adornment and is not something that matters. It actually matters a whole lot. When we were thinking about the People's Forum, just to put an example, like a real example, one of the things that we talked about is that we wanted the character of the space to be a working class character. And that's to say, we want the space to be a space for the working class, um, where people who are doing deliveries and are trying to organize themselves because the gig economy is not something that is valuing their labor, that is not, you know, giving them any type of dignity in terms of what they require to be able to live dignified lives. We want those folks in the space. And so, how do we create the culture that is going to welcome folks that are working class into the space? And so, we thought about the people that would work there. We thought about the way that we wanted to decorate the space. We thought about the colors. We thought about everything with the level of intentionality that allowed for people to feel welcomed into the space. You know, we know that our people are dignified people in essence, and so they deserve that. So we're not only going to say, we're fighting for revolution, we're also fighting for that which looks beautiful. And we want murals, and we want colors, and we want books, and so we were very intentional in terms of how do you create the culture, the space, the way that we treat each other, the way that we speak to each other, the way that we speak about struggle, the way that we live struggle, um as an example, like a pedagogy of example. Like, how do we exemplify so that people are able to learn through experiencing it? And again, if you come into the space, you see that relationality, and you see that because that's the culture that we've fomented. And so again, when we're talking about culture, art being part of it, but everything that we produce and everything that we do is part of our reconstruction of culture. We live in a society where the culture is individualist, where the culture is about, what you buy and how much it costs. We live in a culture where it's all about a certain people's feelings and not necessarily about the collective strategy. So these are all things we need to combat in creating a culture that's a revolutionary culture. And so, I think it's very important for us to understand that. It's very important for us to be intentional about what is our political strategy and how we utilize the development of a new culture in our spaces to be able to exemplify that it is possible to build a new world, that it is possible to build a new society. But we need to be the examples of that in the culture that we create in our spaces. And again, and I'll say art, the art we produce as well, and our relationship with artists. Like, one of the things that we engaged in a lot of conversations about is that we did not want to have a transactional relationship with anyone. And artists are part of that. You know,
Right.
we did not just want to invite artists to be the adornment in events. We wanted to invite and create space for artists to be able to share their political ideas, to share their political work, to be engaged with politics and political processes in a way that allowed them also to nurture a certain type of creativity that is not aligned with capitalism, that is not aligned with liberalism even, but that is revolutionary. Understanding that folks like Emory Douglas, and other folks, Nina Simone, all of these folks were connected to some sort of politic that allowed them to create differently. And so how do we create that ambience in a space where in our culture overall, that's lacking? And so I think, being able to center culture and the arts is very important for any social movement and for any political organization.
No, and that's man, again, just listening to you, this is one of the things we've always used culture as a tool, as a weapon. Our organization FTP, we've always taken, whether it's the visual artists or whatever type of artist, hip hop, you know, whatever type of movement, uh cultural representatives that exist, we were able to take them and make them work or have them work in the best interest of the people.
Hmm.
For us, our Emory Douglas is Goldie Gold down here, or Flux Singleton, Mr. Soul, folks like that. But even on a national and international level, one of the things I love about your region, your area. I work with a number of the artists there, from the welfare poets to Rebel Diaz and the whole nine. These are folks who, that we've always had long-standing relationships and able to rock different projects, so on and so forth. So I salute the fact that you all have the wherewithal and know how to utilize these particular forces, because if not, you will absolutely lose. And I
Hmm.
think, unfortunately, is so many of us. I'm not even gonna say us. So many folks who claim, you know, the title organizer or whatever, or even revolutionary, but they don't have a revolutionary thought in their mind, let alone bone in their body. You know what I'm saying? They confuse, what do they call it now? Mutual aid.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, all that shit's new to me. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, okay, boom, this is the work, and it really, it means something else, You know what I mean? Even when you talk about, underground now, it's like underground is like, folks are saying they're underground and they're doing shows and shit. Like, oh, okay, cool. I don't know how that works, but good luck. No, so I definitely appreciate the jewels when it comes to culture. Um, I want to ask, along with that particular work, um, creative resistance, as we call it. You know, how how's it worked for you? I mean, has it been an effective tool for organizing? Were you able to, you know, or do you feel that it's a hit or miss?
It's so crazy that you use the concept creative resistance because Cubans use that a lot.
Mm,
Cubans use creative resistance in the ways in which they've lived under a 60-year blockade that has cost Cuba $150 billion over the course of 60 years. 150 billion, over the last 60 years, which means a lot of resources. I mean, a lot of schools that haven't been built, a lot of programs that haven't been developed, a lot of medicine that hasn't been able to be provided for people who suffer all sorts of illnesses. And when they talk about creative resistance, they talk about the way in which they have been able to survive creatively and
yes.
resist the blockade. And so they utilize the term creative resistance, which is ultimately the way in which we have the capacity to again create paths towards liberation or the sustainability of our liberation in the case of Cuba. Um, for me, in terms of like my organizing and the creative resistance or the utilizing of creativity, it's precisely like being able to assess what tools are there at our disposal that could be somehow remixed, that could be somehow taken and recreated. Um, so a lot of the work that I did with young people were utilizing media, the use of cameras, the use of creating documentary, photography programs, um, being able to take young people to Cuba or Venezuela and create some sort of report backs or think about how some of the revolutionary programs could be thought of and maybe implemented within the limitations of capitalism in the US. And so, exposure, providing resources and tools, remixing, things that were already there to be able to serve the purpose of revolution. I think that when we are talking about creative resistance, going back to Cuba, that's what it means. Like, how do you survive? How are you able to utilize what you have to maximize to the best of your potential the advancement of revolution and the advancement of struggle? And I think we live in a society that is highly abundant. I mean, even within the many obstacles, limitations, persecution, all of the things that we face, we're definitely in another position, in a different, I'm not gonna say better because it's not better, but in a different position that many of the places in the global south. And still in the global south, they have the creative resistance to be able to build movement, to be able to build political organization, to be able to advance class consciousness. And so there is no reason why we can't do it here. What we do have here is many distractions, is many egos, is many things working against our favor that we tend to amplify more than the possibilities of what we can do. And so I think that creative resistance is out there in many ways. It's built in principled unity. I think that that's been also very key for all of the organizing spaces that I've been a part of. Building coalition, understanding that one organization does not have all the power to be able to advance revolution, that as much as you're able to build that principled unity, the best possibilities you have to be able to advance a strategy. And so yeah, I mean, I think that that's the best answer I could give. I think back to that concept of creative resistance. There's nothing for me. I can't think about it in any way that it's not connected to the definition that I know from Cuba. It's a way of surviving and advancing revolution within the constraints that you have.
No, and that is, I mean, that's exactly what it is. Creative resistance is a tool against capitalism. It's a tool against imperialism. What we see in Palestine, that was, creative resistance. You know what I mean? Um, this platform we're on right now, we have to make, for us to combat, like what you said, to combat capitalism, combat, the ego and all that type shit. We literally have to make what we doing look fly. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? I mean, the screen right here. Shout out to my daughter with the logo and everything. But we have to be creative. We have to have the colors. We have to have the flavor. Not just say that okay, we come get down with our movement.
Yeah, you
You
have
know what
to
I'm saying?
you have to make revolution attractive. You have to make it irresistible,
No doubt.
And that doesn't mean like again within the limits of what keeping our integrity is because we want to keep our integrity, we want to keep our politics. We want to be able to shift people's mindsets of what revolution is and how close it is to their own livelihood and that is something that we should all carry because we all live under a system that exploits us and we want to make it beautiful and we want to make it we want to have people see the potentiality of revolution in everything that we do that it's not simply the horrors or what we're against is also what we're building for and I think that that's key what we're building for what we want to be able to build and give people a glimpse of that is so important.
Word, word. Um, we mentioned Palestine. You mentioned Haiti a little, right? Let's draw the connection because I think that right now, folks look at what's going on in Niger, in Haiti, in
Hmm.
Cuba, in Palestine, in anywhere, that resists colonialism, anywhere that has the gall or the audacity to say that we will not continue to be oppressed. We will resist. We are deemed terrorists, right?
Yeah.
Draw the lines. What is the connection, and why should folks get behind? Because of course, right now with all the confusion, mass confusion, right? We have all types of celebrities being trotted out. We have all types of individuals who you thought at least had, not even if their politics weren't clear, at least were in the neighborhood. But you're finding
Hmm.
folks it's like, we have to support Israel, their victims, so on and so forth. You have some folks calling for a ceasefire on both sides and all this other madness, right? What are your draw that line, draw the connection. What is the commonality?
I think it's important to we've been saying it for a while. Capitalism is in crisis. It's been in crisis for a while. And what crisis and capitalism brings is violence. It breeds violence. Why? Because capitalism then needs to fight to be able to maintain itself. And in its fight to maintain itself, imperialism it becomes even more dangerous. And I don't know if we remember previous to the COVID pandemic, there were a lot of different cities on fire. Like Haiti was lit up. Colombia was lit up. Chile was lit up. There were places in Africa, in India. And so people were already protesting neoliberal politics and austerity measures all over the world. And then COVID hits, which ultimately what it does is that it intensifies the crisis for working class people. It widens the gap even more between those few people who have the majority of the wealth and the majority of people who have nothing. And so a lot of these contradictions are heightened during COVID and post COVID. A lot of the people that were getting in the United States that were able to get some sort of aid from the government, all of that shit is gone. And so now not only is that gone, you're out of a job, there's inflation. So the where we are right now in terms of people's consciousness is an understanding that capitalism doesn't work for them. They might not be able to articulate it fully. They might not be able to say, capitalism as it operates is definitely just messing with my livelihood and there's no way that I could survive. But they feel it. They feel it enough that you have strikes all across the country from all different industries. So people understand that they produce all the wealth and they don't have access to any of it. So when you see what's happening in Palestine and the level of support that has been, you know, that has been moved in the United States, in the belly of the beast, is a combination of understanding the violence of capital, the violence of US imperialism, as it also reflects internally to this country. People are able to make the connection that the United States is putting $4 billion a year into the hands of Israel to massacre Palestinians, while at the same time they're telling us that they can't provide for us as working class people. And so those connections people are drawing. When you see, the UN formulating a delegation to be able to go do what they do in Haiti, and they want to put a black face in it to be able to justify the atrocity, people are able to see that and understand that, because is the level of violence that happens here within the police departments. You have all colors of cops in police departments that are going against black, indigenous, Latino, working class young men primarily in the streets. We have the case of those 5 black cops that killed that black young man. So capitalism and its institutions and its systems could mask themselves in any different color, but they still represent the same thing. And so people are able to draw these connections from these systems and structures, and people are fed up. People are tired. So when you have like hundreds of thousands of people in the United States flooding the streets, acknowledging the humanity of Palestinians, is because we see ourselves in them. We see ourselves in that strip of Gaza, which is an open air prison that has been heavily militarized, where the apartheid state of Israel has control over the water, has control of the electricity, has control of whether they eat or not eat, and is now murdering babies. Over 500 people a day are being killed by Israel. And the United States is unable and unwilling to say, we're not going to finance this anymore, because for the United States, Israel is a strategic project, is a strategic colonial project, just like the strategic project of a colony that Puerto Rico is to the United States, you see? And so all of these connections are made precisely because the United States defends capital, be it domestic or globally, and it defends imperialism as it allows them to do whatever they want, unapologetically, shamelessly, all over the world. And so I think what is happening now is of historic proportions, because people are experiencing a crisis of historic proportions. And so it's a very important moment for us to be able to make all of these connections. You cannot, disconnect the atrocities that the United States has done for over 125 years in Puerto Rico, making it a colony, with what they are funding in Palestine so that Israel can continue the colonial project that they have, or that the United States is okay with continuing to finance NATO to grow in that region of the world, to be able to stop Russia and China from developing, because they want to be the only power in the world. And so I think we're in a different moment. There's a lot of projects that are being developed that are calling for multipolarity, that are attempting to break the unipolar world that the United States has created. And what comes with that, when the empire feels threatened, there's a higher level of offensive, and we need to be ready. Cop City is one of those projects domestically, and we can't disconnect Cop City from the School of the Americas, which is also in Georgia, which is where the majority of the dictators that have been trained by the United States and Israel to go fuck over places in Latin America and the Caribbean and elsewhere, that's where they get trained. Cop City is the same concept, and it's a concept that happens precisely to be able to dominate the majority of the population. And we have to keep our eyes open, and we need to start drawing those connections if we want to win.
You jumped inside my head, because that was the next road we were going down. And I say Palestine is OG Cop City. You know what I'm saying? It was Cop City before the term Cop City. We
Yeah.
look at and you mentioned School of the Americas, and mentioning the School of Americas, we draw the connections, and we say we also have Gilly here in Atlanta, right on the Georgia State campus, which is located strategically in the Andrew Young. Uh, 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 I forgot what the name of that particular building is, but it's actually the building where it sits is in a building named after Andrew Young. So folks are, you know, going crazy like, I can't believe Andrew Young supported Cop City. Andrew Young is Cop City, but
Mm.
and we look at the fact that you know drawing that international connection. You're talking about cop cities sprouting up in damn near all 50 states. At the same time, military bases, over 1,000 military bases
Yeah.
across the world right now. So it is all, and folks act amazed. They're like, oh, I can't believe, of course there's going to be a cop city. There's supposed to be cop cities in a police state. That's what,
Hmm.
that's a part of the geography. That's part of the
Hmm.
plan, right? Um, with that, you know, and you mentioned, these black faces. You are right in the heart of the hip hop mayor. You know what I'm saying?
Oh my God.
Adams.
Let's not talk about. Listen.
How did that happen? What's up? I mean, what's going on the
Woo.
grounds locally? Yeah, you had to step back. You almost forgot where you was at for a second.
I mean, it's. I mean, he's part of a. Again, he is part of a larger strategy. And is this understanding that somehow because a person is black or a person is a woman or a person is an LGBTQ person, they actually represent the interests of working class people, and that is not the case. To say Kamala Harris is not to say a black woman. She's another type of black woman, and
No
people
doubt.
need to get that. You know what I'm saying? Like, they are there for the interests of capital. They're there for the interest of imperialism. Obama was the first black president, and the atrocities that he committed in Africa and the atrocities that he committed against immigrant people, also coming from an immigrant background, are, hideous. Like, and so we need to be able to have an understanding, a clear understanding of how identities are weaponized. Eric Adams is the worst thing that could potentially have happened to New York. It's like, Bloomberg and Giuliani had a baby.
That's a hell of a child.
It is him, you know.
Bloomberg and Giuliani. Well, you might as well
Bloomberg,
throw Koch in as the grandfather then if you're gonna go with
yeah.
that.
So is that is Bloomberg Adams is precisely that. Is if Bloomberg and Giuliani had a baby. I survived Giuliani in the 90s. There's a lot of us who survived Giuliani in the 90s. The persecution, the hyper policing, the profiling that happened that locked up so many young black and brown people, that's his legacy. And Adams is on the same path. He's on the same path. Like, he's cop mayor. Everything and anything he does is precisely to be able to support and promote police and the militarization of police and the technology advancement of police, is crazy. He had the audacity to stand in a room and talk about how migrants were damaging the city, when in reality, when you think about all the money that he has divested into policing in this city, could have gone to so many other different programs, from housing to homelessness. It's horrible. Like, New York City under Eric Adams is a digression that I can't even begin to discuss. I mean, the floods that have happened, that he has this dude, there was the last flood that happened, the MTA was completely, it was collapsed. Public transportation was collapsed. This started happening at 8 o'clock in the morning, and he did not put any statements out till noon. Where
Yeah.
was the mayor? You know, Careless. He just neglects the working class people of the city. And so, how does that happen? Again, the unfortunate reality is that when you talk about democracy in this country, is a dollar democracy. Is who do you have in your pocket,
Yeah.
and who is paying for what? And so he's not a mayor of the people. He's a mayor of real estate developers. He is a mayor of, the ruling class, just like many of these politicians are. And so it's unfortunate, but it's something that we also have to raise the consciousness of our people about, that we need to be able to engage in combating that level that level of horrendousness.
Insanity. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
insanity.
Yo, I mean, and I'm sitting here. You got this. I'm a visual person. So you're saying like if Bloomberg and Giuliani had a baby, I'm thinking
Yeah.
like if Bloomberg and Giuliani had a baby, and they let African man buy the babysit. All right, I'm sorry.
Oh my
Anyway,
gosh.
and Russell Simmons was the Godfather. Anyway,
Oh my
don't
gosh.
mind me. I'm just thinking about New York hip hop and politics. It's just
I see.
it's off the chain. I know you're like, what is this guy talking about? Anyway, um, uh, Claudia's running for president. In case folks don't know, you know what I'm saying. I had to take them all through this right here before we start asking the regular formal questions and all that. I wanted them to see, okay, boom, this is like who is this person right here. And then the New York came out because he was talking about Eric Adams. He was like, this dude, you know,
He is the
he's
epitome of everything that's wrong in
man.
society.
Listen, I mean, it was so wild for me to see him becoming mayor of New York, knowing his history, knowing that he was a cop,
Hmm.
because he had this little organization that was working on his PR, because that's what it was. You know, I was as floored and stunned that he became mayor as I was that Trump became president. You know what I'm saying? New York, I mean, Chicago is a political place, but New York, y'all gangster right now and this shit. I mean, it's like the slave machine is like wide open right now. It's like how can we, build a better plantation? You know what I'm saying? And it seems like that's what's going on. Yeah, so Claudia's running for president. She's running for president under the Party for Socialism and Liberation. Yeah, running for the United States president. Now, I mean, I said all that stuff, and you running for president?
Yep, I am. I believe any president should be truthful.
Okay. I,
For
I haven't met
starter,
one yet, so I mean,
for,
I hate you.
for starters, they should, be grounded in actual history and actual science and the truth.
Okay, okay, okay. For folks who are unfamiliar with PSL, what is the Party for Social Liber man, I'm messing up. Socialism and Liberation. What is this for folks who are just coming in the room and they're like, I haven't heard of this party. Who are these people? And what is Kalonji doing? We're all gonna get blackballed.
We already are. Uh,
Too late. Too late.
too late. Well, the Party for Socialism and Liberation has been around for 20 years, and it actually emerged out of the anti-war movement, and it has grown significantly over the last 10 years or so, more even after the 2020 riots, the 2020 rebellions that were happening in the United States. It's an anti-imperialist, anti-capitalist, and explicitly socialist organization. It has working class base, multinational organization as well. One of the reasons that I came into the party was precisely because in all and every aspects of my political development and in all the struggles that I've actually been involved, whether they be local, national, or international, I've had some sort of interaction and work with the PSL. They've always been aligned and worked with and along the same lines as I have. I've known the party for 19 years. I joined the party recently, but it's a space, again, of folks that are operating within democratic centralism, which is basically the way in which Marxist Leninist parties are structured, meaning that there is internal organization, that there is a democratic process, and there is a leadership. And so there is an orientation that party members are expected to follow. Everyone is expected to follow. There is a program that people take as candidates for about 6 months before they, actually make the decision or the party makes a decision that they're going to be part of the organization. So it's a serious socialist organization that has been working across different fronts of struggle for the last 20 years. And I'm very, very proud to be part of the PSL.
No, and that's dope. So, we got the memo that you was running for president. Karina Garcia running for vice president. I'm the minister of defense. Um, Secretary of Defense. Sorry, but no, I want to like, how did you arrive at that point? Because I know they recently legalized weed, and was y'all just sitting around like, our brother for president? Well, did it go like that, or was you like,
No,
listen, we gonna make some change up in here, and we're gonna come with this particular politics and make
that's
it do what it do?
that's
No,
not that's not that's not the way the party operates.
okay,
We have
I'm just checking.
we have we have a Congress that happens every 4 years.
Okay,
This past year, this 2023 was our Congress. We decided that we were going to engage in electoral politics. We engage in electoral politics every 4 years.
okay,
Although we're not a 4 year electoral politics type party, we do our politics are everyday politics. Our politics are working class politics, which means that we are doing organizing work in all fronts of struggles. Members of organizations do work against police brutality. Some of them do tenant organizing. Some other folks do labor organizing. So all across different sectors of work and fronts of struggles, our folks are engaged and actively working and organizing around them. We have the Congress that happens. We decided that we would do it again for 2024. There was a process by which nominations were made, and Karina and I became the candidates through a vote in the Central Committee. And that's how it was decided. The party, again, has always, for a large portion of its years, has participated in electoral politics. In the last electoral politics in 2020, the party was able to get 15 states. So they were able to get on the ballot in 15 states. Um, and so our idea, our hope, our work is going to be able to have more than that this time around. We have more members. We have much more of a solid idea of what we want with this, which is basically to strengthen political organization and invite people to be active politically within organizations and to fight the isolation that is so much imposed by capitalism that tells us that we need to fight these battles on our own. So we want to motivate and build a confidence of regular working class people to become organized and engaged in political organization. And so it wasn't, we were not passing a blunt when that happened.
all right, maybe I was passionate when I heard about it. Don't even trip. It's all good. But nah, definitely appreciate the coherent answer. Of course, we've had you know, homeboy with the afro on here like several times and whatnot and he switched so many parties. I don't know if he's been passing the blunt, but it's been it's been unclear and uncertain. But the thing that I appreciate most about what you're saying as far as the platform itself is just the organizational part. You know what I'm saying? Because it's not even a question, win, lose, or draw, whatever. It's just like, let's get free, let's organize. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
on that alone, if I am to vote, of course I'm against electoral politics, and we know that. But at the same time, if it's going to be, you all on the books in Georgia, I'll dust my gloves off and come on out and and make it do what it do. But
Well,
definitely yeah.
no, I appreciate that. I mean, another aspect of it, which I think is very important, and when we were talking through the goals for this campaign, is conceptualizing it as and understanding it as like mass education and
Right.
mass outreach, right? And actually sharing with people what is possible right now. The things that are not placed as a political priority that could be a political priority, that is not something that we need to wait 10 years or 15 years, but that could be done right now because we've
Right.
seen that is possible. And so for us, the process of like campaigning or petitioning is going to be a huge process of political education and trying to intervene to build the confidence of working class people to understand that if we produce all the wealth, we should have access to all the wealth, and we should have access to making the decisions around how that wealth is utilized. And that is possible. It's not that it's not possible, it's possible. We're just not in a society that has allowed us that democratic process.
Word up. Definitely appreciate it. Appreciate you coming on, Claudia. I've been trying to get you on, like I said, for 38 years. Finally, finally, shout out to Walter. Hey, little Walter. Walter said, "Yo, I got you." So I said, "All right, good looking, Walter." And the next thing I know, I look up, you was on Jared's show. I'm like, Walter, what's up? Oh, I thought y'all was together. You slipping, but it's all good. Definitely for closing words, if you would say something that the movement right now is missing that we can utilize collectively. I know you mentioned uh unity. I don't want to put words in your mouth. I don't know if you said practical unity or
Principled unity.
principle. I'm tripping. I would say
Yeah,
principle, definitely functional unity, because
yeah.
oftentimes, we have uniformity, but not necessarily unity. Um, what would you say, like that we can, if there were some words that you can give to that next generation or even the current generation? What would you say as far as the thing that we're missing that we can use an adjustment on?
I mean, I think that unfortunately, there's been a dismemberment of our conception of politics in this country, intentionally by the state. A lot of the folks that could have oriented a lot of our development, talking about my generation and the generation that came before me, a lot of the folks were either in jail, exiled, or killed. And so there's a whole generation of leadership that was stolen from us, and a very intentional breakage that took place in history. And a lot of our responsibility is reclaiming that history and reclaiming that definition of political organization that is removed from the state, that is removed from the Democrats and the Republicans, that is removed from the aspirations of becoming capitalists, the aspiration of having a seat at the table. We don't want a seat at the table. We want the whole damn house. And if we can't have it, then we burn it down and we create something new. But that revolutionary concept of we need to uproot capitalism, we need to uproot US imperialism. And there's a level of seriousness that comes with it. There's a certain level of discipline that comes with it, and humility. And in order for us to build that principled unity, we need to acknowledge all these different things and be willing to participate in organized struggle, in political organization. I think that that's pivotal. I think that that is foundational for anyone that considers themselves a serious revolutionary. The capacity to engage in ideological struggle, being able to build ideology, to study alone and study collectively, to be engaged in struggle and having people push back and nurture the way in which we think and the way in which we act is important and significant. And we can't do those things on our own. So political organization is highly necessary, being able to be part of a collective. And no organization is going to be perfect. No organization is going to give us everything we want and we think we need. But if we are not part of an organization, we cannot contribute to the capacity that we should be contributing to the change of society. And so those are the things that I would say that is highly important for us to be able to engage in political organization, to be able to engage in developing principled unity amongst peoples and organizations across the historical lines of division, and that we need to be able to strengthen a movement and build a movement that is divorced from the capitalist ideas, values, and structures that exist.
No doubt. Give us the website for folks to support.
But if folks want to check out the campaign, they could go to votesocialist2024.com. They want to volunteer, they're more than welcome to do so. And if they want more materials and statements, they come out and we always put them there. So folks are welcome to check that out.
No doubt. We appreciate you coming on, Claudia. And for the folks at PSL, I was just joking about y'all passing the blunt around. It's all good. You know what I mean? But when I'm in New York, let's, anyway, We appreciate the work you're doing. Don't be a stranger, um, and continue to fight. We're supporting you here, of course, at Black Power Media, and stay on top of the world. We're gonna win in spite of ourselves.
Thank you so much. And whoever's able to come November 4th, we have a huge, we're calling it the biggest march in the history for Palestinian solidarity in the United States. Is going to happen November 4th in Freedom Plaza in Washington, D.C. at 2 p.m. And so if you could come out, if you can't, just share the information with people. Is going to be historic.
No doubt. That's tomorrow. So get your ticket today. Get in the car, the truck, on the bus, whatever. Tomorrow, Saturday. Head to DC. You might see me there. I might just,
Okay.
hop in the Who ride and mosey on down. And join the comrades in solidarity. Because there's so much going on right now, and definitely principle unity, definitely functional unity, and just being clear about what this fight is for. Because I think that at the very least, that's the start. Because I think folks are totally unclear about who's who and what's what. But again, we will win. Let's get free. Claudia, thank you for joining us. And I'm not gonna say good luck on your win. I'm gonna say we'll see you in the Black House. You know what I mean?
That's right.
And we're gonna make it do what it do. All right.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Kalonji.
No doubt. You're checking out RSTV. That is or was Claudia De la Cruz talking about what's going on in the world. Some of the things that she's going to be putting together. Definitely, if you think about voting, go to votesocialist2024.com. Support their movement, support their efforts. Shout out to Karina Garcia and their whole crew over there. We appreciate what you all are doing. Appreciate you all fighting on behalf of the people. Period. Anyway, again, check us out. It's a lot coming on today on BPM. You'll see me again on Monday. This Monday coming up, we will have guest Dead Prez. You know what I'm saying? If you missed the last couple shows, we did go back to the archives. We had lawyers for for Rochelle McGee, and also Matula Shakur. We talked about that situation, compassionate release, all of that. And we also, like I said, did the show with Chuck D. Those are some of our past shows. Make sure you like, subscribe, and all that good stuff. And we're going to be with you again and again and again. Subscribe to Black Power Media because this is where it's at. All right, y'all be safe out there. Peace.
Sometimes the riot is a quiet one, where the battle is to love yourself and function in society, where voices of reason are muted by anxiety, like gaining notoriety is selling your soul. So we tend to go no deeper than the shallow water level, trying to keep us overhead in the face of all the slurs and the stares, mentally frozen, paralyzed by fear of failure and success. So we lock, stock, barrel, running while it's crumbling. All these towers and they're babbling, but the baby's in the bath and the stash under the bed. On my head, spinning from the circles and the puppets and the strings that they pull, then we move. Reactionary warfare never produces winners on the field. Feeble and foolish, what tools and what weapons are we using? We need some new ones. Real revolution, it's real solutions. Well, we've taken on the ways of the ones who Conquer with their guns and religion and division. Got my inner me looking like my enemy. Real revolution. Where my inner me really a mirror